We have a question here from Asanka asking how he can do a very quick intermarket check or intermarket analysis before taking any entry. So, thanks for the question, Asanka. It's a very useful and important one because it is something that we do ourselves before most of the entries that we take, just doing a quick spot check and cross check, across the wires for different asset classes. Now, the first step, obviously, before you take any entry would be to do your fundamental, your sentiment, and your technical analysis to make sure that you are trading in line with those three elements. And once, of course, you've established that particular direction or that particular bias that you want to trade in, you will, of course, have a trade plan that you want to trade in line with that particular bias. And depending on the type of trade that you take, you will want to do a just quick cross check or spot check across the main macro markets to make sure that the coast is clear, so to speak, for that particular trade. So, for example, if you wanted to trade something like the pound versus the US dollar, then you would want to take a quick look at something like the euro dollar, seeing where that is tracking, seeing where the dollar index itself is tracking, seeing where something like the euro pound is tracking as well, just to make sure that you're trading in line with any type of cross flows due to some liquidity cross flows between something like the euro pound and how that might affect something like the euro and the pound individually. If you're trading something like the Aussie dollar, for example, you would want to have a quick gauge and scout over to the equity markets to see where they are trading. As a high beta currency, obviously, it's very strongly correlated to something like the equity markets. That goes for something like the high betas, the Japanese yen as well. Or let's say you're trading something like equities itself, you would want to take a very quick look over again to your high betas or your risk sensitive currency pairs, seeing where they are tracking, looking over to your bond yields, seeing where they are tracking throughout the session. Are they moving in line with that particular bias that you have for equities? And if they aren't, you need to make sure that you are aware of all the potential risk factors that can go into that particular trade. If you're trading in line with a particular risk zone for the day, so let's say you're trading risk on a risk off, then you would want to keep a very close eye on all the corresponding markets. So keeping a very close eye on those risk sensitive currency pairs, like the Aussie yen, the Aussie Swiss, Kiwi yen, Kiwi Swiss, etc. Making sure where they are tracking, making sure where your global equity indexes are tracking. Are they moving higher or down in line with that risk flows? What about your risk sensitive commodities like oil, copper? How are they performing in the session? Again, looking over to bond yields, how are they performing? So, if you see, for example, if you're trading something like the Aussie yen, so let's say you want to trade the Aussie yen to the downside. Or let's say you want to buy the Aussie yen, right? But you look over to equities and you see that okay, the S&P is actually trading at a very, very, very significant resistance area, or moving towards a very significant resistance area. Then you might want to hold off on that particular trade because you might see the market find some resistance in equities, which can of course negatively affect your Aussie trade. As well. So it's always just a good idea to do a quick spot check and a cross check across the various asset classes, like the major FX markets, like the major commodity markets, like the major equity markets, like the major bond markets, just making sure that you are aware of any potential risk factors from cross asset flows or intermarket flows before you pull the trigger that can pose a potential threat for that entry. So I hope that helps, Asanka. Any other questions, don't hesitate to let us know.